we're blessed. We own a pretty nice M3, like I mean pretty nice, man. Natalie's M3 is pretty much mint, and it's completely standard, okay, so there's no modifications done to it. I'm going to talk about that in a bit, but I want to start with my 328, my stroke 328. So this car started its life as an automatic granddad spec 328. I converted to manual, and that's important because I'm using the Get Track box from my 323 that I had at the time. I'm not using the ZF box. I then took the engine out and I did a complete stroker build with that, which you'll see my videos for. Long story short, it's a 3 litre with different cams, an M50 manifold, and an exhaust which has had the baffles taken out, but is basically standard apart from that. Suspension and sort of control wise, it's had all the little trick bits done to it. So it's running a Bilstein B12 kit. We've got poly bushes wherever you can get poly bushes, offset caster bushes in the front wishbones, spherical bushes in the rear where you can fit them, which is the outer upper arm and lower arm. We've got camber arm in the back. We've got a little bit of camber running on all four corners of the car, I think 1.5 degrees, something like that. The brakes have been upgraded with a 1-inch master cylinder, and that's for better pedal feel. So without going into the fine detail of what each one of those does, that combination of bits provides a car which is much more planted on the road. Doesn't feel like your regular E36, which is a bit wallowy, a bit sort of sloppy around the corners. It feels planted. It's not a track car. It was never intended on being a track car and will never be a full bore track car, because I wanted a cruiser which I could drive on the road. So what that provides, all those chassis modifications allow me to have a 328 which doesn't really feel like a 328. It feels a lot more sprightly. It's easier to drive, and it hugs the corners quite well. We've got a couple of nice ones here actually. Let's give a wee bit of the old beans. It's a bit slippy at the moment because the rear tyres are a bit heavy. Oh yes, there she goes. The stroker really is kind of a nice touring car, I suppose you could call it. She makes her way around these roads in the Pennines quite happily. There's plenty of power there. The power comes on fairly slow, but it builds and builds and builds. And all in, the package itself really has, I've got it to the point now where, I don't know how to describe it. I suppose it's a comfortable car. It's not a bone shaker. It's got plenty of get up and go to get you down the road when you want it to. The sound you get from the exhaust is just about enough for my liking. It's got a nice bit of growl that you can hear. The 328 holds a special part in my heart because I built it though. And the important thing to me is the way that when I drive this car, I hate to use the term, but I'm going to use it here because it's a bit cliche, but it is true. It's built, it's not bought. I put this car together with a lot of help from people on the internet and a lot of advice from those that know a lot more than I do. And every time I drive it, I get that sense of, shit, is it going to fall apart? But at the same time, when it doesn't fall apart, which it never really does, it's doing a pretty damn good job of holding itself together. The satisfaction I get from knowing that, I turned my hand to this, and it is definitely an improvement over a standard 328 by a long way. So, the legit M3 then. What's the crack, eh? Well, straight away, I'm going to tell you the most obvious thing is it's got more go about it. It may be a given, but the thing that's most impressive to me about the way the M3 engine works, which is the S50 B30, it's a genuine, legit Euro early spec M3, is the throttle response, man. Those in the know will know that throttle bodies are always going to give you a better throttle response because of the way that the aerodynamics work inside engines like that. I never quite expected that it would be this dramatic, and when you look at really the two different cars side by side, there's not a massive amount between them. It's been lamented many times that one of the reasons that people didn't like the E36 M3 is because it didn't stand out against its brethren, and it was too easy to make a standard E36 look like an M3. That's fair enough, you can't change that, that's fact, and it's part of life, unfortunately. What you cannot get from a standard M52 engine, or even the S52 in the US, is the throttle response that you get from the high-flowing individual throttle bodies that the S50 V30 has. The way that it picks up poke is just, it's completely different to my car. And related to that partly is the way this thing sounds. The M3 is far raspier and a lot louder than you might expect straight out of the box. So you already have that auditory feeling of, wow, okay, this is a different car. It's definitely a step change to the standard 328 or the modified 328. So the M3 has got that going for it. I mean, obviously the engine is a much better built engine. It was basically race derived from the factory, and you kind of feel that under your right foot the whole time you're driving it. As a standard car though, it feels very similar to every other E36. By and large, the body roll and the suspension compliance is, I don't really know a better word to describe it than wallowy. There's a lot of, you can feel the weight of an M3 as you drive it around the roads. Now, the suspension is quite softly damped, so it's a comfortable ride, although it oscillates on the road quite a lot. Now, to be fair to this M3, it's not brand new shock absorbers, and there may be some wear on them which is bringing that to the fore, if you like. But I'm trying to do a raw comparison between the real cars that you're going to pick up and drive day to day. That noise, man, that fucking noise it makes, it's just lovely. It rasps like a dragon. Yeah, so the suspension compliance is completely different and it feels much more like a road car compared to my modified 328. It's fun to drive on a B road. That's, you know, why these cars were made in the first place. But it does, for want of a better word, it's lacking. It feels like it could do with the suspension being improved to make it feel like a better road-hugging car. So going in tandem with that chassis description, the brakes on the M3 are definitely underpowered. As a standard unit, they're better brakes than they are on the 328, so it has got more stopping power. But for the weight of the car and the design of the car, they definitely could be better. So it lacks in that department as well. So the M3 out the box is definitely a faster car, it's a more willing car, it revs happier, the gearbox is lovely and light to use, it's far different to my Getrag that I've got in the Stroker. This one is running a ZF box, which is basically the same box that is in a ton of different cars. This particular gearbox that we've got in this one is from the 330 that I actually stripped down from my Stroker build. So this is an E36 gearbox. But that being said, for all well in the world, it's essentially exactly the same gearbox, same ratios that was in the M3 originally. The limited slip differential at the back provides a lot more grip out the corners, and you can feel that working in comparison to the Stroker. It gives you a lot more confidence as you put down the power and you come out the twisty stuff, along with the staggered rear tyres. So this one's running 245 rubber on the back and 225 rubber on the front. And you definitely know all about that because one, it gives you a lot more grip out the corners, but it does have a tendency to want to understeer. And if you're going to drive this car on the track, one of the things you probably want to do is sort that out by making it a square car all round. The interior of the M3 does feel special because you've got, in this one we've got the Vader seats. It's a full black on black car this, as it came from the factory. It's not been altered or modified in any way. And the Vaders, I'm going to say something controversial here. I love the way they look, but they're not that comfortable. And maybe some of you out there are going to flame me for that, but if you've ever had Vaders, I'd love you to chime in and tell me what your opinions of them are. I don't think they're the comfiest seat in the world. I think they look awesome and they give you that feeling of, yeah, I'm definitely in something a bit different to a standard E36. But for actual bum on seat feel, there's better seats in the world, that's for sure. So, let's get back to the big question. Should I modify an E36 standard car or should I buy an M3? And I honestly can't give you a straight answer for that, but I can tell you for a fact that if you want to feel like you're in an M3 and you want to feel like you're in something special, something that's a cut above the rest, you've got to have an M3. There's no question about it. It feels sprightly, it's got control on the road, but if you want to have something that's yours, that's unique, that's giving you memories and time and love and patience and anger and hate and all the rest of those emotions, modify your own one. I suppose that's the crux of it. It depends on the person and in the eye of the beholder, like all these things, like car modification in general. That being said, if you want the ultimate E36, I suppose it's fairly obvious what you've got to do. You've got to modify an M3. Is that the elephant in the room? Who knows? Maybe. I hope you get some insight out of this video and you get a feel for where we're coming from with these two different cars. Both of them have their benefits, both of them have their downsides. We're lucky we own both of them so we can enjoy them individually and together. I hope you've enjoyed this too. Let's get some comments going and discuss this. Thanks for watching as always, guys. Oh, yeah. Oh, jeez. The brakes are shite, aren't they?
Yeah. Still scowling.
Do me a favour.
What?
I want you to do this for me. I don't want you to say no. Give me a little slap just around the cheek. What is that?
That's an owl.
That's an owl in the daytime. It is an owl, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. Sweet. Without further ado,
Without further ado. Oh, not in the village, not in the village. Fucking hell. Just check the battery. I can't fucking see it, doesn't matter, go.
7%. Fucking